This spring, I filled up my traveler's notebook with just one trip. I was based in Kyoto and I did day trips out to Kobe, Himeji, Uji, and other places that I'd like to take you along with me today. I think this is the fullest a TN insert has ever made me feel, and I hope you enjoy today's video flip through. So grab some coffee or some matcha and let's get right to it. I'm first going to take you through my collaboration Accordion Fold insert. I can't recall who the collaboration was with, but it has this adorable stationary creature themed art. So you have a deer inside what looks like a stationery case, someone rowing inside an ink bottle, a rocket ship made out of pencils, and a ball gown made out of pencil shavings. It was just so cute, and I reserved this for my first solo trip to Japan. I went in May of 2026, and I was able to, for the first time in my life, successfully journal around 80% of the journal on the trip itself. I sketched mainly while waiting on trains, and they feature some scenes from my favorite parts of the trip. The cover says Hello Kyoto because I was based in Kyoto, and features some onigiri, which I love from Onimaru in Kyoto. One of my favorite supplements to buy first once I get to Japan, which is their fiber drink. And some film, which I picked up in Yodobashi camera. And even made a new friend who is a fellow film photographer. The paints I used for this accordion fold are this set I picked up in hands. It's the Zig Kuretake Gansai Tambi paint. They come in this palette of basic colors that offer a warm and a cool. There's a flesh tone, gray, and white and black. And they also pop out, so you can easily swap out the paint tins. What I like about this is it's carry-on safe because it completely dries down to a solid. Inside the kit, I have my Sakura Jelly Roll white ink that I use for highlights, the water brush that came with this portable paint set, and my own travel brush set from a local maker here in the Philippines, which has a detail brush on one side and a flat brush on the other. I try not to overthink painting the colors. I'm honestly not really good at it yet, but I just like practicing as a memento of my trips. I love these paints because they're in the middle of gouache and watercolor. They're quicker to dry, and you can build them up to an opacity that is very reminiscent of gouache. You can also layer them and reactivate them just like gouache using water. The first thing that I sketched was me cycling along the Nemachi River. I did a cycle tour on the first day in Kyoto just as a way to get the lay of the land without walking 20,000 steps. And it was quite nice late spring weather. I painted the turtle stones, which we crossed, and gave a vibe of that scene from the show Squid Game. And then it turned out that this part of Kamo River is actually quite shallow, and you can even step onto the pebbles in a certain area. No biggie if you step off one of the stones by accident. This area is near Demachiyanagi Station, and it's called the Delta by locals. It's the part where the Kamo River and the Tak River meet. Our tour guide told us that locals also picnic out here, especially during cherry blossom season. I also have a little scene of the Aoi Matsuri because I was really lucky that this once-a-year festival was taking place on the day of my cycle tour. And as we went around this area in Kyoto, the Imperial Palace and the adjacent garden, the university town in northeastern Kyoto, I was able to catch glimpses of this hundreds of year-old sacred festival. This part was a little temple that I saw on a picture while riding the train as I was sketching, and I just decided to sketch it in anyway. I don't know exactly which temple this was. There's no label, but yeah, it's just a reminder that I was able to actually fill up this insert and sketch these scenes while I was in another country. Then here on the lower left-hand side is Hyakumanben. This is actually another temple in the area near where our cycle tour ended. Once a month, on the 15th, it gets converted into Kyoto's largest handmade goods flea market. There are a bunch of other flea markets that happen around Kyoto and the rest of Japan, so I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in that. I was particularly happy to come across this one because All the goods being sold here had to be handmade, and as a result, I found a lot of really unique pieces and enjoyed my time browsing from stall to stall. Each flea market also has food options, so it was a nice place to grab some lunch and wander after the cycle tour. This is the Kyoto University Clock Tower, which I passed by because it was in the area. The end of our tour actually took us to Nanzenji Temple. It's really easy to get if you visit all the temples in Kyoto. We are actually talking about this with someone else on the tour group. They were a newlywed couple from Brooklyn spending their honeymoon in Japan. What I found helpful for my trips is finding something unique about a temple or shrine and visiting those. Nanzenji is one such example because it has these aqueducts that are well preserved and they make for a really interesting feature as you explore the grounds. They deliver water from the nearby Shiga, I believe, through to Kyoto City, and it served as a critical resource during the time that Kyoto was the capital of Japan for many years. Then I did one of the frequently done twin day trips from Osaka, which is Himeji and Kobe. Himeji is the site of one of Japan's most beloved castles, and I arrived there a little bit late, so I was only able to sketch a bit because I didn't know that you have to sign a waiver at the office in order to sketch and paint on site. I was really only able to block in the initial features of the castle and the roofline because the office was closed. The upside of that is I was able to explore the interior of the castle despite not having planned to do, and it was absolutely memorable. Later that day, I found myself in Kobe, the Nunobiki Herb Gardens to be exact. It features several herb gardens and really nice open-air dining with a European-themed vibe at the top of the mountain. I enjoyed watching the sun go down over one of Japan's most interesting port cities and a hearty meal with Kobe beef and various herbs from the garden. I also featured one of my favorite shrines to return to in Kyoto, especially at night. It's called Yasaka Jinja, and the vermilion color of the gates and the warm glow of the lights inside contrast wonderfully with the night sky. You'll find if you visit this temple, because it's so near to Gion and the central and touristy areas of Kyoto, that many people also do visit it at night. I also painted the scene of someone busking in Gion, and there was even a small crowd dancing to the violin music he was making. Another part of my trip was a day trip out to Uji to check out the world's oldest tea house called Tsuen. And I had a really funny experience there, which I'll share in my Uji-centered video. But the highlight of that day was the first kaiseki experience I've ever had. So if you've never had kaiseki before, it's a very formal and rather expensive multi-course dining option in Japan. And I recommend, if you can, to try it at least once. This trip really highlighted how I enjoy visiting waterways and seeing how cities build themselves around them, particularly Kamo River and the Uji River. I have my favorite bits of the kaiseki here. This is intended to be a sukiyaki bowl, which I haven't detailed, and I kind of don't mind. And then they had this sashimi plate, which had really yummy, I think it was chutoro, because I don't particularly like the taste of oto, despite that it's the more premium cut. Chutoro is like medium fatty tuna. And then they had this taco, which is octopus, and one other thing, I think Thai, which is sea bream. And I really liked all of them. The dessert was another highlight for me. It was coconut pudding with wine jelly. and I thought initially was cut grape, but turned out to be a Japanese baby peach. I think it's called wakamomo. This final panel I filled up with the church that I visited in Kawaramachi on the Sunday for service, and the Tofukuji temple where I also had such a serene experience. So that's that for my accordion fold insert. The back pages are blank. I plan to do written descriptions of my reflections and remembrances of each highlight. All told, I really like how it looks right now. Next, let's go through the actual insert. So you can see it has a little handle now because I inserted the first thing I make a beeline for when I'm either in Kyoto or Osaka, which is Gogoichi or 551 Horai. It's just really yummy meat buns, and they have a branch right at Kyoto Station. After a long flight, it's nice to be welcomed back to Japan by reliable, yummy nikuman. As I said, I actually managed to do journaling on this trip. What I did was I saved the ephemera and then I would go through them. I only brought a glue stick just so that I had flexibility, because sometimes the glue tape can't stick the thicker ephemera like this on as well. Just having a pen, one highlighter, and one glue stick, I would save these in the folder pocket, and then the rest, as much as possible, I stuck on while I was there. This insert has gratuitously been stamped because I was able to visit Traveler's Factory Kyoto. So you can see the many different kinds of stamps they offer there. I really like this one, the Keep on Traveling in Your Mind with Traveler's Notebook. It captures the spirit of the Traveler's Factory brand really well. You don't have to go to fancy places to use this notebook. It just encourages creativity, and in a way it romanticizes your life before that was even a trend. Then this stamp, the Shinpukan stamp, features the building where Traveler's Factory Kyoto is located. And the telephone is because it was originally the Kyoto Central Telephone Office. I love the architecture of the place, and if you're interested to see more about it, please check out my video on Traveler's Factory Kyoto store tour. There's also this really cute sort of university themed flag that says, when you're alone, you can always go to Traveler's Town. Here's a clearer picture of the Kyoto calling stamp. I also like this Maiko stamp, which is a geisha from Kyoto. And it says, have a nice trip with Traveler's Notebook. And then this one too, it's a record and it says, have a nice trip with good music. The rest of the stamps in this insert are predominantly eki stamps or train stamps. Even this one is also from Traveler's Factory Kyoto, this via airmail stamp right here. I found that it blended well with the rest of the pinks on this page. And there's the Maiko stamp again. I stuck on this little card that says welcome to West Japan. I think this is when I picked up my JR pass. I used the Kansai area pass because I was going to Kobe, Himeji, the airport. I wanted flexibility if I needed to go to Nara, etc. So the pass allows for unlimited usage of certain lines that cover this particular area. And there are other passes with wider areas or different zones covered. There are actually online calculators that allow you to check, given your intended locations when you visit Japan, whether the pass is worth it for you or not. This is my boarding pass, just landing in Kansai Airport. This really juicy stamp, which I think was from Kawaramachi. The stamp tables look like this, and I had a sticker that featured some of the best of Osaka and Kyoto. The meat buns were featured, so I stuck that on here. And here's a picture of the meat bun branch that I visited when I arrived. I was also really lucky that the Haruka, or the express train that took me to Kyoto from the airport, was the Kitty one. It's completely Hello Kitty themed, so that was a nice surprise. I think some people even reserve specifically for that car. And of course, I arrived in the evening, the luminous Kyoto Tower greeting me. A sight for sore eyes, really. This spread features the various ephemera I picked up. I forgot a jacket. I thought spring would be warm, but the areas with AC were still quite cold, so I picked up a nice jacket from Uniqlo. The rest of these are from our tour guide, Nao-san. She's part of the Japan Exploration Tours Network, and I can't recommend her enough. She's a great tour guide, very pleasant, and also very knowledgeable. I learned a lot during this tour. Particularly, I learned to look up. This isn't a very clear picture, but it's a several hundred-year-old painting of a dragon on the ceiling of one of the temples we visited. She let us know that this is because Kyoto suffered from several great fires, And the dragons were thought to be associated with water, which would then protect them from natural calamities such as this. Then, the Aoi Matsuri, which I mentioned earlier and showed you in my paintings. This is a picture of the cow, which was my reference for the painting earlier. This is a picture of Nanzenji, one of my favorite places to visit in Kyoto. I think if you visit any shrine in this area, I can't recommend Nanzenji enough. As mentioned, I also visited Kyoto University after heading by the Hyakumanben flea market. I popped into their museum and the exhibits were quite interesting. One of my favorites was this one with this tree. Despite it being super bright and sunny outside, once I entered this area, the area felt like a rainforest. It got so dark and nicely humid, and I could walk through the exhibits talking me through the different species of trees and plants that they had on showcase, which was meant to feature one of their arboreal, rainforest specialists who is from Kyoto University. This is an example of the Kyoto sightseeing pass. This comes with the area pass. So with the area pass, typically you have a one-day pass that offers you unlimited use of certain city lines or subway lines inside Kyoto. I think they offer it for the subway, and then they also have one for the Keihan line and the nice one that I like, the Hankyu Hanshin lines. I really honestly don't mind that my insert is not exactly chronological, because even as I'm stamping, I won't know how many pages I'll need per day, so it's just something that I accept. I had a bunch of stickers from Tsuen, which I visited in Uji. This is a weighing machine ticket from Traveler's Factory Kyoto. Usually you weigh yourself and then it will dispense a ticket, but it was broken that day, so this was just a random draw from a bowl. And then these are pictures from my visit to my favorite matcha store in Kyoto called Horaido, and a picture of the stones at the Delta. This is from my day trip to Himeji. This is the entrance ticket. I really like gathering ephemera. It's not trash to me because it adorns my journals really nicely. And I like how the gold here matched the gold highlighter that I chose and complemented the purple Kyoto stamps. Yeah, I like this spread. There was a nice looking moat also at the entrance to Himeji at the main gate, which was really calming before I entered the very expansive grounds. I was able to get the station stamp both in my little station stamp passport collection and a blank piece of paper that they had available. I like when they offer this because they also include the station name. Sometimes I forget which station is which stamp, and this is really helpful. I really understand why Himeji is revered as one of Japan's best castles. Apart from being one of the 12 that are still the original castle construction and not a reconstruction after it was damaged from the war and the natural passage of time, it's also absolutely stunning. The grounds are impressive and massive, and the castle itself makes for such a stunning sight against the blue of the sky. I'm really glad that I was able to actually sketch it here in my accordion fold insert. Although I'm pretty sure my sketch doesn't do it justice, it's my little way of remembering personally what I did on my trip. After Himeji, I went over to Kobe, as I mentioned, and this is the Kobe Herb Garden, the Nunobiki cable car, which takes you high above the city. And guess what greeted me as I went up? As I arrived in the Herb Gardens, a stamp station. This spread is from a paper bag of cream puffs that I picked up at one of the stations in Kyoto. The lady really took a solid 30 minutes of her time talking to me because she was very encouraging when it came to me learning Japanese. She said that my pronunciation is good, and I heard the classic jozu, which means good job when you're complimenting someone on their efforts. I know that this is a word that the Japanese people really throw out as encouragement and doesn't really mean that I'm so good at Japanese. I have so far to go, but it was really encouraging to hear and to even be able to interact at a slightly deeper level than my previous trips. So I will definitely be continuing my efforts to learn Japanese. Then I schedule what I like to call potato days into my trips. These are when I don't have any particular destination in mind. I completely go by what my energy feels like that day. Because I have a general map of interesting areas in the place I'm visiting, I usually pick one of those. In this case, I chose Tofukuji. I have a full video just immersing you in the sights and sounds of that gorgeous temple. It was quieter than the more famous temples because this temple sees crowds during fall season. In this case, it gave me more room to look at things and it made me feel like the midori, the green, just absorbed me. It was honestly very healing. I have some ephemera from the products I picked up from Kyoto. This one actually I thought were incense sticks, but they turned out to be pieces of paper, despite it saying Fuji incense. So I don't know if I'm supposed to burn the paper. I haven't figured it out yet and I haven't tried. This is also an adorable stamp, so I don't know if it's coming through clearly, but I can't remember which station it's from. This says Yushare. I don't know what that means or which station it is. The rest of this is in kanji, so I don't know. These are from my day trip to Uji. I had a hilarious experience at Tsuen, which was redeemed by the amazing, completely elevated experience I had at my first kaiseki. And it even turned out that the man I was conversing with, who at first I thought was the host, who turned out to be the chef, who turned out to be the founder and owner, was so inviting and welcoming that I didn't feel intimidated or out of place. I really just enjoyed eating all the beautiful food there, which I have a sketch, of course. But before I show you that, I will show you the rest of the things I did in Uji, apart from get stamps, which is visit the gorgeous Byodoin Temple, which houses the Phoenix Hall. That's the little image on the 10 yen coin. Here is the Uji River, which I absolutely love, alongside its counterpart stamp with a duck. I just noticed the duck now. This piece is from some wrapping paper of the chawan, the matcha bowls that I got from Hyakumanbe, the flea market that I mentioned earlier. Even their wrapping paper is just so gorgeous, isn't it? Then ta-da! This is the little sketch I did in real time also, inside the room, and this was the view out the window to the Uji River. I really wish I get better at watercolors soon, but I guess the only way to do that is practice. And then on the left-hand side, I journaled and took note of all the different dishes that were served to me. If you want tips on kaiseki and me sharing my experience, subscribe and check out my video on that. Here is Gion at night. I mentioned earlier in the painting insert that I love visiting Yasaka Jinja. They also had this little stall at the entrance of the shrine where when I spoke to the man, he asked me when my birthday was. So he had one card for each day of the year and it was flower themed, a flower or plant themed. They pick a plant. Mine was a really resilient succulent, which I like the symbolism of. And then the meaning was translated to something like joy at the fact that I was born. It was a really uplifting card that I only figured out the meaning of when I checked it out at the hotel. If the stall is still there when you visit Yasaka Shrine, be sure to check it out. It's easy to miss. He's right after you ascend the main stairs. This is a piece of ephemera from the churches I visited, and I really like how textured and nicely hand-painted or hand-drawn this looks, despite being a print. More junk journals from Kyoto. Oh, I love how smooth this is. Pictures of my experience in Tofukuji, the matcha house, and the best soba of my life. I think this is the entrance ticket to Byodoin, so it has the golden phoenixes that you see on the roof of that building. And then, a really nice experience I had at the airport, where I was just quietly stamping the Sorayan stamp that they had at the 4th floor of the terminal. And then the lady came by and somewhat shyly gave me this Sorayan sticker, which is at the front here. And then I said thank you, maybe a little too brightly, I think. And she pulled out a tin that had 3 different designs of the Sorayan, which I'm so happy about. I was able to get this plain one, which features the airport, and then another version of Sorayan, and one that has sakura blossoms or falling cherry blossom leaves. So cute! It's a simple thing, getting stamps for your journal when you're traveling, but it can lead to the most wholesome interactions. This page is where, when I got home, I tested out all the stamps I got from Tamaru Inbo, which is one of the oldest stamp stores in Nishiki Market. Most people miss it though because they're at Nishiki Market for the food and the touristy experience, but check out the rest of my channel for the best stationery stores in Kyoto area. This one is a brochure from Tofukuji, a wonderful and serene experience on my designated potato day. It has details on the layout and the garden itself, which you must experience in person. There's this stage on this side where The wood is old and creaky and just has so much gravitas, and you can sit down and lose yourself staring at the garden. I didn't really get that before, but after experiencing it myself, I think I understand now. Then at the Machinagi station, there was someone selling postcard kits of the different festivals in Kyoto at the time, and I was able to pick this one up. This one features the Aoi Matsuri, which was going on that day, and again, the really nice wrapping paper, so I decided to fill up an entire 2 pages with it. In my quarterly insert, I have the mirror image of this. So this is the dedicated travel insert for my Japan trip, and the completed picture if you put the 2 of them together. I thought that was a neat little memento of 2 pieces of the same thing. And then my Gogoichi paper bag. Unfortunately, it smells like ball pen ink rather than the meat buns, which is probably well and good because it prevents me from going out to look for meat buns. This is a brochure of one of these rent-a-cycles on offer. This isn't the one I used, but it was a brochure in my hotel. I really liked how it showed the map of Kyoto, particularly the zones. I've had trips where I spent time on the southeast. In this case, I spent time more on the northeast. I'm due for a trip more on the northwestern side of Kyoto, which is further out. Because Kyoto is not as well connected as Osaka and Tokyo, I do recommend zoning your trips. I take shorter trips at a time because the Philippines is quite near Japan. But for people who are there for a longer period, it's helpful to take note of how spread out Kyoto really is. You have to zone your destinations, otherwise you'll end up spending more time and energy running around the city. If you can do a bike trip in a certain zone, I really recommend it. It's very affordable, and most of them offer e-bikes and even bikes with child seats if you're very confident about your cycling skills. This is the brochure from the Phoenix Hall, which really was very majestic. The wisteria were not this thick at the time of my visit, but I did enjoy seeing the phoenix on the rooftop. I liked how bright and sunny the place was compared to how dark and moody and atmospheric this particular brochure is, but yeah, to each his own. This page just features my highlights. I guess I haven't finished this yet. I was writing them out as I was on the trip. A bunch of other brochures. I really do recommend keeping a sharp eye out when you're walking through the train stations because they have free brochures that make for really great junk journaling as you're on your trip. This one was from the museum, which had a heritage collection going on of different miniatures of key sites all over the world. Interesting impression of the University of Kyoto. This is a picture of the church, which I painted, and these are the rest of my tickets. I was able to save a bunch. I like that the Kansai Area Pass comes with this nice little envelope. So this was the Hankyu one-day pass. Some of these are receipts. This is the Haruka, the express train that got me from the airport inside, and just a bunch of other things I collected and stuffed into this envelope. A nice little memento of the trip. This says Yaruwayo, a new Kansai Ben or West Japan dialect that I learned of, which sort of means let's go or let's get it. A really nice Himeji sticker, which does the castle more justice than my sketch. Some green maple leaves from Tofukuji, which is completely red in fall. I really will go back. Hopefully be able to tolerate the crowds then. I enjoyed the solitude when I visited off-season though. And then the sticker that the lady at the airport gave me, what does it say? Oishang. Oishi yang. My Japanese learning journey continues. And with that, that's the close of my travel flip through for my recent spring trip to Japan. I like this contrast between the green of the Tofukuji gardens that I saw and the red of the maple leaves along the bridge. I put this at the end of the travel insert because it reminds me that I'll be back one day in fall to see the same place transform. And by then, I will likely be a transformed version of myself as well. Call it sentimental, but what are journals for, right? I hope for anyone planning their own travel journals or their own trip to Japan, this helped you out. And for those who just spent time with me today, I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed looking back on this, and I'm excited to fill up more of these binders in the future and share my spreads, thoughts, and analog adventures with you all. It's time for me to clean up, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!